Today I'm going to show you how we bring back to shape maples that have lost their way in effect. So I have about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, this one I've already done, 6, 7 maples. These maples were grown by a person who has a certain style, but I like to change the style to what I like to see in a maple. They're all very healthy maples, so we'll start doing them one at a time. So let's start with this one. This, in fact, is a Deishojo. The history of this tree is that it was an imported tree from Japan more than 35 years ago, and it has been grown over the years, and this person has just let it go, but it's become what I would call flat top. If you have a full view of the tree, you see the top has become flat. Maples, as with most bonsai, they like to be like a dome shape, and a flat top tree like that doesn't look quite the right shape for a maple. So the first thing I will do is to bring it back into that conical shape. By the way, whatever I prune here, if I wanted to, I could make cuttings from these. So let me again repeat, the best cuttings are current year's wood, which is this. You tear that as a heel cutting, remove the bottom leaves, stick that in hormone rooting powder, and you put it in some sort of compost, and that should root. But because we have so many trees, I don't have the time to do all of them. So let me carry on. And by the way, pruning in the middle of summer is a very, very good time to prune. Many people are afraid to prune in the summer because they think that it will harm the tree. But as I've always pointed out, if you prune in the middle of summer, what in fact you're doing is you are pruning into wood, and whatever cuts you make will heal very quickly. They will callus over, callus meaning they will seal themselves and heal. So this is where some guts is needed. If you just form in on the camera like that, and we will see how I will change the shape. But because this was left to grow for so long in that shape, it may take a few months. Certainly by the end of the autumn, you will see the new shape growing from the new growth that I have encouraged to develop. But you can see already that flat top has more or less been corrected to a large extent. This, by the way, is the back of the tree. I notice some branches have been removed. The front is usually this side, which leans. Let's take an overall view rather than the detail, please. So you get the overall shape. I noticed that this tree, again I will show you, because this was not my tree. Come close and I will show you. This is a fluffy scale, and they suck the sap from the leaves. You didn't realize that this was diseased like that. These are pests, insect pests, and they suck the sap and can create a lot of havoc. So you got to really watch it. So I will spray this after doing this. And I don't do any more. I've cut enough. I will now just wait for the tree to grow, and hopefully I will have a little head like this developing. So this is all I'm going to do. Let's remember to, by the way, these sort of leaves which are diseased, ideally one should burn them, otherwise these insects spread and multiply. Because I made quite hard cuts, see, these are at least 1/8 of an inch in diameter, what we would say like 8 or 10 mil, I think it is. More like 8 mil or 4 mil, I don't know. No, this is 4 mil, so that must be like 8 mil. So the sealant I use, you can use any sealant. Don't be too worried about that. Any sealant is good. I seal the twigs because if you don't seal the twigs, these twigs will lose moisture, and if it loses too much moisture, the branch could die. I've said before, there are different schools of thought about using sealant. Some people don't use sealant at all because they feel that it can, trap all the disease in. But you can see now I've changed the shape of that tree. Okay, that's one done. I've got quite a few trees. Now let's look at this one. I must say that all these trees are quite unusual because they are different varieties. This could have come from our nursery more than 30 years ago because I recognize the variety. This is Corto Nuito, what we call harp string. And in case you don't know the variety, Corto Nuito, I've got large garden trees of this, is quite a temperamental tree because from the same tree, no, tell a lie, I think this is called Shishigo-san. Because Shigo-san means 357. On the same tree, you get 3 types of leaves, or some have got 3 lobes, 5 lobes. I don't know what the origin of the tree is. But on the same tree, you get these different types of leaves growing. They're not just grafted. From certain parts of the tree, it'll just happen. So let's prune away. It's just by the by. Maple collectors like these unusual varieties because it's always a talking point because it's unusual. This tree has lost its way in more senses than one. In fact, I should try and propagate this, but how much can I propagate? There's no room. See, just by doing a few cuts, you see how I changed the shape of that tree. It's now more bonsai-like rather than top-heavy. So this is an unusual one with that foliage. I should really do cuttings because apparently from the same plant you will get all sorts of different types of leaves. It's like the Satsuki azalea. Apparently, from the same tree, a different part of the tree, you can get those different colored flowers irrespective of where you have made the cutting or whatever. Nature is very strange, So that is that one done. Brought back to shape. So this tree, although the trunk is not that thick, it would be like, I would say like 2 inches at the base, at least 2 inches, probably more. See, I'm killing some of these scale inside just by squashing them. Those of you who are squeamish and don't want to use chemical, you see, just by squashing it, crushing it, you'll get rid of it. Okay, so that's that one done. Now let's bring another one. Now this one I think could be one of the small leaf ones. Usually the small leaf maples, anything with a hime at the end of the name signifies it's small. So I'm not sure if this is Kyohime, because this is grown almost like a broom style shape. So again, first thing to look, yes, you see this a fluffy scale again. So you can see how flat top and wide this tree has become. So if you analyze the tree, let me just bring the famous piece of bag or whatever. If you didn't want to cut, so remember, if you don't want to cut, imagine the tree like that. You see something like that. See, that is the sort of area you're wanting to cut. So these things I do in my sleep almost. It's amazing, unless you practice it a lot, it's not that easy to get the type of shape that I create. I had the other day a guy on one of my workshops and I let him prune one of my maples. I asked him to look at the outline, but he kept looking at the inside. So that's a dangerous thing to do. Always keep an eye on the overall shape. See, if I look at the overall shape, I can see that that is coming out. As they say, the expression, you can't see the wood for the trees. See, just by taking a few bits off, can you see how the shape has changed? This is more like the maple that I like to see with this sort of shape. It's a very natural looking tree. As long as you don't have too many crossing branches, that should be fine. So that's how I would keep that one. And it's not only from the viewing side or the back side, you should also look at the side view like this. See, that's going inwards, you don't want that. I should be feeding these trees as well. Okay, so that's another one done. Now this is yet another variety, and this I would say is probably Nomura, because Nomura is similar to Bloodgood, is a very popular variety in Japan. Now this shape is pretty good. I wouldn't do too much to it. I think taking just the tips out might help, because it'll force more bud back. But apart from that, this seems pretty good. As I say, it's a nice natural looking shape. And while I'm here, I will just show you another one. Okay, they're getting heavier and heavier. Now this, believe it or not, is actually a forest. But because it's so old, a lot of the trees have fused together. It's not a clump style. If you look at it closely, sometimes forests, if they're allowed to grow for a long time, they do fuse. So they are separate trees. Although the choice of the trees has been so cleverly done that they're all the same clone. Very often you get forests with different types of trees and you'll get different colored leaves which spoil the effect of the forest. So, in fact, this could be a better viewing front, but I'm not too fussed. So let's bring this back to shape. Now, because it's a forest, you should be able to see the individual trunks as well. See, if it was put in a round pot, you could view it from every side. Even this side, because it's fairly open, looks quite nice. But I don't think this is the real front. And this one, I don't think this is the real front either. Just remembering to wear a glove because the other day I cut my forefinger not being careful. So when you prune, the pruners can be dangerous implements. I keep getting emails and questions from customers about leaf pruning, and I dare say on quite a lot of the other social media sites, I believe, the question of leaf pruning always crops up. Different people have different views and they read about it, so when they read about it, they invariably want to practice it. But my long-held view, and of course leaf cutting or leaf pruning is usually done on maples, I can safely say that I am a maple expert, because if you come to the nursery you will find thousands of maples that we've been growing. So I do know my maples. I would say that leaf pruning does not produce necessarily a smaller crop of leaves second time round. The main purpose of leaf pruning is to get smaller leaves, and the Japanese also say that it helps to create a better autumn color. How far that is true, I have never been able to prove, but I know that it doesn't necessarily produce smaller leaves. From my experience, I found that if you leaf prune, you stimulate the growth so much that you may end up with larger leaves, so you would defeat the purpose completely. So if your object is to get smaller leaves, you can, I wouldn't say forget it, just be a bit careful. It doesn't necessarily produce smaller leaves. And you can only do it, or you should only do it, with a strong tree. If a tree is weak, you can damage the tree, because the leaves are the food factories, and if you deprive the tree of food or nutrients, then the tree will suffer and could even possibly die. So leaf pruning should only be done, I don't know, if the tree is too congested, I would say. You leaf prune and thin the tree out to let light into the structure. And leaf pruning, just for the sake of getting smaller leaves, does not always work. So I think this seems to be a nice front like that. So this is a group, very high quality group. So originally from Japan. And because it's a group, it's still got like a conical shape. You see, I'm trying to create and maintain the conical shape from every side. And because I made some quite severe cuts to the old knobs, those dead burrs, I'm going to seal these bits that are cut. So that's a big cut there. Seal that. And there's another one here. It's amazing how many fluffy scale there is on all these maples. There's a lot of it. Okay, so this is this one done. So this is the front of the tree really, slightly like that. So this was a forest. Okay. Now this one, this beast, I call it a beast because it's heavy and the weight is due to the rock. It's a root over rock. If you come close, you can see typical Japanese import, grown over a rock. I think you should always use the front that looks most interesting, and the roots are interesting from this side. In fact, it looks interesting from this side as well. So, okay, but again, it is rather flat topped. So because it's flat topped, I need to correct it. Notice some of the low branches are dying because not getting light. So it is rather awkward looking, being flat top like that. So let's proceed to create the proverbial dome shape. Not that difficult really. But if you neglect your trees and don't do anything to it, it does lose the shape. Even from this other side, you see how wide and flat it's become. It's like tall trees. If you just keep letting the top grow and afraid to take the leader out, it'll reach the sky. Eventually reach the sky. Eventually, I think I might need to lift that branch a bit, but I don't want to take too much off in one go. It may weaken the tree too much, so ideally that should be visible like that. So that branch needs lifting. I think that's a better front because this side, if you do this side, there are too many branches there. Far too many there. So again, I will check if there are any severe cuts. I will just seal it. The amount of maples that I have pruned and the maple demos that I've done, most of you should become quite expert at growing your maples by now. But people who live in tropical countries and see these videos, unfortunately, maples are difficult to grow or impossible to grow in tropical countries. So that's done. To seal this as well. And I think I have only one more to do. And this one is also a beast. Absolutely massive. I can still lift it. Now this tree is a rather unusual maple. I don't have my maple book with me. Oh. I guess this weighs at least 15 kilograms. Look at it, it's massive, absolutely massive. And it's got these cut leaf. I think any maple book should be able to identify it, but I don't have my maple book with me. Again, an imported tree. And the way it's grown almost like a broom style. It's rather nice, except that I still don't like the shape. This gentleman has grown most of his trees in this box shape, and I like the dome shape. So let's create a dome shape out of it. And because it's leaning this way, and you can see more of the trunk from this side, I will use this as the front. So let us proceed to create a dome shape from this, and it will still be very nice. I love this tree. The foliage is so lovely. It reminds me of these trees that I used to come across in the tropics. In parts of India, there used to be these great big rain trees. And they had this sort of leaf. Trying to take out any branch which is growing inwards. If they grow inwards, see like this one, this branch is growing inwards. I don't want that. So I'll keep it this wide spreading shape. I know I could tighten it much more, but perhaps I wouldn't do it all in one go. So I've got rid of that very square shape. It seems to be getting weak this side and stronger this side, so I think by placing it more into the sun that way should correct it. But my next thing to do is to feed it. So with any fertilizer, just throw handfuls of fertilizer, and since I'm here, I will just show you what I do. Stay there. So a tree like this, I will just sprinkle. This is one of the rapeseed type fertilizers, as much as that on the top. And every time it gets watered, the fertilizer will leach in. So that is all I do. And hopefully you have learned something about shaping maples. Okay?